Football Podcast. My name is Ryan Satkoviak. We are halfway through my solo adventure this week as Clinton is still on vacation. Tonight we are continuing our fall preview series talking the Purdue Boilermakers, and to help us break down the Boilers for 2025, Jordan Jones from Boilers and Beyond joins us this evening. Jordan, thank you, sir, for joining us tonight. How are you doing?
Doing well, Ryan. Thanks for having me on. We're getting closer, man. I think it's the 23rd, so 1 month from today we got week 0 games coming up.
Yes, we are officially inside the 30-day window. I can taste it. I'm very excited for this season. It's last year was a little strange because I think everyone was a little unsure what to expect with conference expansion and playoff expansion and how all of it was going to look. So we all have a little bit of a better idea how everything in theory is going to look this year, right? I'm sure there's going to be some chaos that happens at some point that no one sees coming, but at least there's a little bit of known in a sport that is becoming increasingly more volatile as we go through.
It's college football, man. Just when you think you got it figured out, a season like 2007 or something comes along.
Oh
So,
my gosh, yes.
yeah, that's what makes it great, though, man. You never know. And this year, it's wide open. It really is. It's going to be fascinating to see what goes on at the top.
Yes, for sure. I rarely can recall a year where there's so many seeming contenders that have so many, I don't even know if question marks is a fair way to phrase it, but so much uncertainty, particularly at the quarterback position. And that's what kind of makes it fun is, hey, here's these high ceiling guys. They could be good in theory, but also they could flame out. It wouldn't be the first time a 5-star quarterback at a helmet institution has not lived up to the hype. So there's going to be some fascinating stories to watch this year. And I think Purdue falls into that. Though I guess it depends on your definition of fascinating. I mean, anything can be fascinating. Whether it's nationally relevant is another question. But we were talking a little bit pre-show. I watched a lot of Purdue football last year, given who they were playing, and they kind of became a footnote in some of those games, unfortunately for them. But new head coach this year, Barry Odom, a guy who has experience coaching in, we can call it a Power 2 conference with his time at Missouri. He's been a defensive coordinator in the SEC, and he just had a pretty successful 2-year run in the Mountain West with one of the premier Group of 5 schools in the country. But before we kind of dig into the Boilers for 2025, I just wanted to kind of get your thoughts on the last 2 years of this football team, because obviously the Ryan Walters era was not a success in any way, shape, or form. And it's just such a fascinating case study to look back on, because we're talking about a team that has had recent success. I mean, we're 3 years removed from them playing for a Big Ten title, and it's a team that 2 years running now has been rated by other power programs for their players in the transfer portal. And we're not just talking about guys who are like, you know what, I'm going to go try to ply my craft at Arkansas here. You got Clemson and Ohio State and Texas A&M and Oregon coming for these players. It's not a team that's, I mean, maybe they don't have talent at all the right places, but it certainly has not been a team that's been devoid of talent whatsoever.
No, you're right there, and that's been a big part of it. 2 off seasons in a row now, you saw Nick Scorton and Deion Burks 2 years ago go to A&M and Oklahoma. This past year, a little bit different with the firing of Ryan Walters, that being a big part of it, but Max Clare goes to Ohio State, Dylan Thieneman goes to Oregon, Cole Brevard to Texas, Will Helt to Clemson. There are some more. Kendrick Breedlove goes to Arizona State. There were a lot of players from this Purdue roster that had value elsewhere. Don't know that that's the best reflection on what happened, but it's a fact at this point. So, yeah, it's been interesting, but overall, when you look at Purdue's last 2 teams, that there was talent there. The talent was better than the record would indicate, but by no means were either of those 2 teams, capable of being contenders in the Big Ten or anything like that. The roster wasn't to that point.
Mm-hmm. Any sense of what kind of the final nail in the coffin was for the Ryan Walters era? I mean, again, I'm not going to sit here and act like, hey, they should have kept him around for another year, because at a certain point, right? It's like, hey, just pull this Band-Aid off. But in this day and age of college football, especially with the house settlement and teams being wary of the money that they're going to have to invest in their rosters moving forward, You sometimes see coaches get a little bit of a longer leash as programs are a little bit reticent to pay a large buyout.
Yeah, I think the Notre Dame loss was when maybe it came to mind that it could be a possibility. Not that I expected it, but losing that game 66-7 was just jarring.
Hmm.
The Notre Dame series is one that means a lot to Purdue fans. That game was played every year from, I want to say, 1946 to 2014. So you have generations of Purdue fans who take a lot from that game. And of course, Purdue and Notre Dame haven't played a ton in recent years. That
Hmm.
series went dark for 7, and then they've played a couple of times since. But to lose that game in front of a sold out Ross-Ade Stadium on CBS in that fashion, I know that didn't sit well. Purdue lost at Wisconsin 52-6. That came the week after Purdue fired Graham Harrell, the offensive coordinator. Purdue was 1-3 at that point. Purdue goes up and loses 52-6 to a Wisconsin team that, we now know went 5-7, didn't
Hmm.
make a bowl game. I think that was almost a no coming back point.
Hmm.
But then I think the week following was when Purdue almost beat Illinois,
Yep.
who was a 10-win team. And there was a lot about that game that was weird. Purdue had a 27-3 deficit. Illinois had Michigan on deck. Ryan Walters was calling the plays for Purdue and has a ton of familiarity with what Illinois wants to do on defense
Hmm.
because he used to have that staff under him when he was the defensive coordinator. But I think that his fate was sealed going down the stretch. There was a report from, I think, Pete Thamel or Pete Nakos, one of those guys, had said that Purdue's second to last game at Michigan State was going to loom really large. I don't know how much I believe that. If Purdue won that game, were they really going to bring them back? I don't know. But then losing 66-0 at Indiana,
Hmm.
there was no chance Purdue could bring that back. You could not come back from that being the final reality of Indiana beating you 66-0 to move to the college football playoff, and you go to 1-11, having set the record for school history worst loss in a game twice in 1 year. Just to two in-state programs, to the
Yep.
two most historic rivals you have. Just there, I don't know if there was a singular breaking point. Wisconsin felt like a real point. Just it, oh, the Northwestern game too. That was a disaster. That
Mhm.
I've listed half the schedule here,
Right.
so we'll move on.
Well, and that was, I think, we're kind of when we were talking Purdue preseason last year and just looking at the schedule, it's like, man, you got Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, Notre Dame. I don't think anyone had Indiana circled as, I mean, Purdue fans cheer for the rivalry, but in terms of just being a nationally relevant program for the year, Purdue ends up playing 5 playoff teams last year and gets outscored 261-17 in those games. That when you kind of stack it out like that, it makes sense. Like, hey, we need to do something different because that just seems like, hey, we can't run this back anymore.
No, no, and it's not as much about Purdue not being competitive with those teams as it is losing by 18 to Oregon State,
Mhm.
as it is losing by 46 to Wisconsin, to obviously Indiana was a playoff team, but just the gap between Purdue and some of those programs that it feels it should be competitive with.
Mhm.
It just was really unbelievable.
Mhm.
I think Purdue only lost by 18 to Nebraska, but Nebraska left dozens of points on the field. It was just a really big gap. Purdue lost 6 games by 35 plus. That's
Mhm.
half its games. You're
Yeah.
getting just humiliated in.
Yeah, the more we say the stats out loud, the more unbelievable it sounds. And we have a comment from Nathan in the chat here. 261-17 doesn't even sound real. It's just jarring when you say it out loud. But moving on to 2025 and to hopefully happier times for Boilermakers fans. Barry Odom comes in, and I think he's obviously had 2 head coaching stops previously, and I think like you're better as a head coach the more that you get into it, the more that you do it. And I think the fact that he's had that experience at Missouri, not just at UNLV, right? Because you can make an argument that G5, P4, that's just a completely different animal in terms of what's expected from the head coach now. But that experience he's going to be able to draw on in a power conference, I am excited about it. But what's kind of the tenor of the fan base heading into 2025, given the new coaching staff, but also given the significant roster turnover on this team?
Yeah, I think Purdue's fan base is a little bit lukewarm at this point. Um, there was real optimism entering last year. There really was. Before the show, you talked about how you went to the Oregon game and how there
Mm-hmm.
was a wonderful crowd.
Mm-hmm.
There was a wonderful crowd every week. I don't remember if Purdue sold out every game. It came very close to doing so.
Mm-hmm.
And the crowds were solid. Fans were really excited coming into last season. I think fans really wanted to believe in Ryan Walters. They really wanted to believe in the roster. But it obviously didn't work out. And I think there were a lot of parts of the roster that fans got frustrated with.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think the transfer portal era has gone the way Purdue fans have hoped. So I think there is some skepticism seeing a roster with, I want to say, 80 new players when you factor in transfers and freshmen.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a big faction of the fan base that's very tepid about that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you can swing that the other way and say Purdue went 1-11 last year. How many of those guys really need to come back? Do you just throw everything out and start fresh? I'll let people be the judge, but I do think that's a factor, and I think part of it a little bit is how excited Purdue fans are about basketball right now.
Mm-hmm.
Purdue has a preseason top 5 basketball team coming back, and I think there are plenty of folks who would be more than happy to skip football season and just get to the basketball as Purdue tries to win its first national championship. So, I think it's lukewarm, but as we talked about, that fan support is there.
Mm-hmm.
And if Purdue starts to build some momentum under Barry Odom, it's going to be back to where it was in the Jeff Brom years when Purdue really filled up Ross-Ade Stadium well for the first time in years and had fans really, really excited about the football program.
Yeah, the return of the Boilermakers, just so many electric nights at that Ross-Ade Stadium. The Ohio State upset comes to mind. I just had to throw the dig in on Clinton there. I'm sure he's listening somewhere, the resident Ohio State fan. But looking at the roster itself, I want to start at the quarterback position. You have the Ryan Brown pulling the old oopsie doop going to UNC and then coming back, but also cutting Malachi Singleton from Arkansas. You got Evans Chuba coming in from Washington State. EJ Colson coming in from UCF. What do you envision the quarterback competition playing out like in the spring? Is it going to be wide open? Do you have a sense that maybe Ryan Brown, given his experience last year, has a bit of a leg up on the competition here?
Yeah, well, it's the portal era. So EJ Colson's gone already. He
Oh gosh.
he came in for spring ball and he transferred afterward. I don't recall where he ended up. I don't think he went back to UCF in Ryan Brown fashion.
I can pull you up here. He is at, I don't even know what this logo is. Incarnate Word.
He's an Incarnate Word. All
There
right.
we go.
He's gonna try to go the Cam Ward or Zach, maybe more likely Zach Calzada route. But Ryan Brown is probably the favorite. There hasn't been any reporting that makes that, factual or anything. Barry Odom goes tomorrow at Big Ten Media Days. So maybe he'll have said something by the time you're listening to this about the quarterback battle. But it's going to be an open battle going into camp. Reporting out of spring practice was not particularly high on Purdue's quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be Malachi Singleton. That'd be Evans Chuba. Singleton played a little bit at Arkansas last year, came in relief against Tennessee, and they won the game. Evans Chuba hasn't really played a whole lot, but I think it's Ryan Brown's job to lose. I don't know that he would have come back if he weren't going to be the starting quarterback for Purdue. Now, again, anything can happen when you get in fall camp, but my hunch is that he's going to be the guy it would probably not be a great sign for Purdue if he is not the starting quarterback.
Mhm. Well, if he does end up being the starting quarterback, he'll be one of two returning starters on this team. I don't remember what podcast I was listening to, or maybe I saw it on the internet, but somebody posed a hypothetical question, which was, does the Purdue basketball team return more starters than the football team does in 2025? And has that ever happened at the Power Four level in the history of college sports? And I don't know. I don't know basketball enough to be able to say one way or the other, but that's just a remarkable stat or factoid to say out loud.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's not ideal, but at the same time, with the way last season went, do you really need a lot of those starters coming
Right.
back? Yeah, obviously, the Max Clare, the Will Helt,
Mhm.
Dylan Thieneman, Cole Brevard, there are guys you'd want back, but I don't think Purdue needs to continue doing what it did a season ago too much. It's going to be all right for Purdue there.
Mhm.
Yeah, two returning starters, and that's Ryan Brown starting 2 games in there.
Yep.
That's it. So
Yep. The other,
crazy.
yeah, the other returning starter being Devin Mockabee, who feels like he has been in college football for a million years. Any other names that you're kind of keeping an eye out at the skill position, wide receiver or running back, heading into fall camp?
Yeah, and Devin Mockabee deserves a lot of the praise he gets. He's kind of become a folk hero among Purdue fans as the lone guy who's stuck around. Purdue, he's the only guy left from the 2022 Big Ten championship roster. He's stuck around through 2 coaching changes, through several offensive coordinators.
Mhm.
He's been a really good soldier. He's always spoken really highly of Purdue. He deserves a lot of the praise that Purdue fans give him. In terms of other guys at the skill positions, it's a lot of unknown.
Mhm.
Malachi Thomas is a fifth-year guy from Virginia Tech. He's played in 4 different seasons for the Hokies. He's never been the featured back. And then Antonio Harris is a walk-on who has gotten some praise in the backfield. At wide receiver, or I guess at pass catcher, really, George Burhan is the name to know. He's a very athletic tight end. He was a high school track star in the greater Indianapolis area. Problem is, he's been hurt quite a bit.
Mhm.
He broke through in the 2023 Indiana game, had like 5 catches, 90 yards or so. I'm freestyling on that. I don't remember for sure. But he's a really good tight end if he can stay healthy.
Mhm.
He's the type of tight end you build an offense around the way you did Max Clare last year. Purdue got Nitro Tuggle out of the transfer portal. He was, I believe, a top 100 recruit.
Mhm.
Went to Georgia, played a little bit as a true freshman. I know he played in the Tennessee game. That was an ESPN night game I remember watching. And he went to a high school that was in my conference up in northern Indiana. So, I paid a little extra attention to him. Purdue recruited him out of high school. Really talented guy, man. Really
Mhm.
talented guy. He did have a driving incident down there at Georgia. And Purdue fans have been a little bit cautious about these Georgia transfers
Mhm.
because they brought 4 in last season, and a couple of them really didn't pan out. But he's a really intriguing piece who I believe still has 4 years of eligibility. I think he was able to retain his red shirt last season. Past that, yeah, a couple of guys that I'd point out are Charles Ross and Chauncey Magwood. Charles Ross came from USC, where offensive coordinator Josh Henson was.
Mhm.
Chauncey Magwood came from UCF, where quarterback coach Darren Hinshaw was. And I've heard the theory, and I kind of subscribe to it, that when a new coach to a school is bringing players in from his former school, there's probably a reason.
Mhm.
There's something they like about that. So those two names kind of stand out to me because they do come with guys who are part of Purdue's offensive coaching staff. You don't think they would have brought them along if they didn't think they could play.
Mhm. Yeah, the Kurt Signetti rule, if you will. He brings the guys that he wants from JMU, but he leaves his quarterback behind, and they get a kid from the MAC, and they have a pretty good year with it. With you meant I just want to touch on Josh Henson real quick. Good offense with USC, but Lincoln Riley famously the play caller there. What sense do you get kind of the offense that he's going to want to bring to this team in 2025?
Yeah, I don't really have a great sense for that, to be honest with you, Ryan. Barry Odom is going to be flexible. He is going to be willing to do whatever on offense. I think that's one of the things you see with him, having been a head coach at two different times and having been a lot of different places. I think he's pretty adaptable. I
Mhm.
don't think he's married to having a specific type of offense. Now, yeah, Josh Henson comes from the Lincoln Riley tree. That's great. How easy is it to do what Lincoln Riley does and replicate that? I don't
Mhm.
know. I know there's the thought that Lincoln Riley is a quarterback guru, but these guys are clearly pretty talented when they come in.
Mhm.
I know Baker Mayfield had quite the rise, but I mean, Kyler Murray, Jalen Hurts, Caleb Williams, these guys were pretty highly thought of.
Mhm.
So, I don't know exactly what Purdue wants to do. One thing they've been very public about, they want to establish the run. And that leads into thinking that Ryan Brown is going to be the starter because he is very mobile. He can use his legs very well. He's a big physical runner. That would add up with what Purdue says it wants to do on offense.
Mhm.
But the proof will be in the pudding when we throw the ball out there on August 30th against Ball State.
Mhm. Moving to the defensive side of the ball, Barry Odom brings his defensive coordinator Mike Scherer with him, and this was an aggressive defense last year that was good at taking the ball away. They led the Mountain West in run defense, and they were 11th in the nation in sacks last year. I think they were top 30 nationally in scoring defense as well. What do you expect from a defensive scheme standpoint in 2025? And it's got to be nowhere to go but up, right?
Yes, yes. Purdue's defense was a mess the last 2 years. Ryan Walters had a very unique defense, as you're well aware. Man coverage exclusively, playing one deep safety who lined up 25 to 30 yards off the ball.
Mhm.
He was in the next zip code. And, it worked well for him at Illinois. But when you look back at that Illinois team, they had what, 6 or 7 NFL draft picks.
Mhm.
Devin Witherspoon, Sidney Brown, Kirby Joseph, Johnny Newton, Keith Randolph. I mean, that was a loaded team. Quan Martin. They were good, man. They were really good in the Big Ten West when there weren't great quarterbacks in the Big Ten West. I mean, we're
Mhm.
talking Tanner Morgan, we're talking
Mhm.
Spencer Petras, um, whatever Nebraska was doing at that time under Scott Frost. So it just didn't work. Kind of on the same note, Barry Odom's very flexible. I don't remember what podcast I was listening to, but there was a really good anecdote about them playing Ole Miss and when Matt Corral was there and they were throwing it all over the place. But Corral wasn't much of a runner. Odom has the game plan that we're going to drop everybody.
Mhm.
And he talked about how throughout the game, I kept wanting to bring pressure. I kept wanting to bring pressure because that's my MO, but I had to refrain from it. That way, we're going to stick to the plan. They ended up winning the game as an underdog. So, yeah, it's something that I think he's very flexible, and ultimately, we're going to see Purdue play to its strengths. The problem is, with so many new pieces, I don't know what the strengths are.
Yeah, and that's a good segue to the next question because I mean, we're talking 54 incoming transfers. That's a lot, for sure. And it's hard to know like how are they going to fit together? How are they going to play together? Are these guys going to respond well to a change of scenery with more opportunity? Any names that you're looking, I mean, any level of the defensive side of the ball. We touched enough on the guys who are coming out, but with the guys coming in or any of the returning underclassmen from last year's team, any guys you're looking to take a step up in 2025?
Yeah, I know you brought up, naming one guy from each level of the defense. I always think there's something to who coaches bring to media days.
Hmm.
And CJ Madden is coming with Barry Odom. They're out in Vegas right now. Uh, if CJ's 21, hopefully he's having some good luck at the tables. But he was a Georgia transfer who got hurt in the third game of the year last year, missed the
Hmm.
rest of the season. Four-star recruit out of high school, hadn't been able to get on the field at Georgia, came to Purdue with several years of eligibility left. I always think there's a reason coaches bring guys to media day.
Hmm.
Reports of him out of the spring were good, and the last staff liked him. He was someone I heard good things about. So it would make sense that he can take a step forward because Purdue needs pass rushing. I mean, in this day and age of football, especially now that you're not dealing, you're not playing in the Big Ten West where the ground
Hmm.
and pound is as big of a part of it. You still have those programs, but it's not as culturally embedded as it used to be. You got to get after the passer. And that's where Purdue's had some success historically. Purdue's going to hope that CJ Madden can be that guy. At linebacker, they got a really good transfer portal addition at the end of spring ball. Sanders Ellis. He's a linebacker out of Tennessee State, coming up from the FCS ranks. You never know fully what you're going to get there.
Hmm.
But man, there were a lot of programs, including Tennessee. The Volunteers were after him. So for Purdue to land him is a pretty big deal. I know the early thought is he's going to be a starter for Purdue. He's going to be an every down linebacker. And that's a position that even if there wasn't a transfer portal exodus and importation, there wasn't much there because Ryan Walters simply didn't prioritize it. Purdue played with 5 guys at the line of scrimmage and 5 guys in the secondary. The guy who played linebacker mostly last year, Kydron Jenkins, is off to the NFL.
Hmm.
I want to say he got a camp invite somewhere. There wasn't much there. So Purdue's looking entirely new at linebacker. And then in the defensive backfield, Tony Grimes is a really interesting name. If you're a recruiting junkie, he was a 5-star recruit back in the class of 21, reclassed up. So
Hmm.
he came out a year early, goes to North Carolina, put together a nice couple of seasons there. He transfers to A&M, Texas A&M, where he gets hurt, misses the year, doesn't play, winds up at UNLV last season, puts together a nice year. Now for his final year of eligibility, 6th year maybe, 5th or 6th year, he's with Barry Odom again at Purdue. Purdue needs a leader there. That defensive backfield is all new. The corners are all new. Hudari Hines is still around. He was a true freshman last year, and he's going to start opposite Grimes. But this is an all new group, and Tony Grimes is going to be a guy that Purdue looks to be a veteran, someone who's played a lot of football, because there is not a lot of that on the defense. Not a lot of guys who have played power conference football.
Hmm. I love the Grimes call out because I was looking through the transfer list right before I sent you the invite to this over, and that caught my eye. I'm like, is that the same Tony Grimes that I'm thinking of? And good to know that it is. Yeah, I pulled up the player page here. Yep, missed all the 2023 season, and that's how he is still playing college football.
Yeah, and he's also out there at Big Ten Media Days. So
Hmm.
it's Grimes, it's CJ Madden, and it's Devin Maccabee.
Hmm.
And we obviously know why Devin Maccabee's there. He's the only guy who's been around for a while. So
You're a
yeah,
loyal soldier, and you get rewarded with a trip to Las Vegas.
yeah, and this is I think this is 3 media days for Maccabee now. I think he's been
Damn,
there 3 years in a row. So
that's impressive.
yeah, I guess
Yeah, the 5-star from the loyalty standpoint, but he's a good player too. Excited
he
to see him
is.
in 2025 as well. But to kind of wrap up our conversation, I just want to get kind of your sense on what a successful season or how you would define a successful season for the Boilermakers in 2025. Because it's just my thing is I just don't like telling fans of other teams what they should expect, right? Like that's not my place. Everyone watches college football for a different reason. Everyone thinks about their team differently. And in this day and age where everything's just so playoff centric and conference title centric, I think we can kind of lose the plot sometimes of what makes this sport great. So looking at this team, coming off a tough year, but with a good coaching staff, looking to make improvement, but again, a really difficult schedule, especially in that Big Ten conference here in 2025. What are you looking for from this team this year?
Yeah, as you said, it's another difficult schedule. You play Notre Dame in the non-conference up in South Bend. You have Michigan and Ohio State in back-to-back weeks. You have a really poorly timed trip to Washington. You go out there as your 7th game in as many weeks. USC comes to town. It's tough. It's a really tough schedule. You've got Illinois and Indiana, who both project to be pretty good. Um, we live in the gambling centric culture at this point to
Hmm.
where the over under win total is how you evaluate a team. And I looked at FanDuel a couple days ago. Purdue's at 3.5. with the under at minus 245.
Oh God.
So there's no point in even betting under on that.
Yep.
Vegas is telling you that Purdue's going to go 3-9 or worse. Um, does that mean that Purdue's season is a colossal failure if it goes 3-9? I don't know. You have to go 2-0. You open
Mhm.
with Ball State and Southern Illinois. You can't lose either of those games. Purdue's a 16.5 point favorite against Ball State. Southern Illinois is a decent FCS program, but you've got to win those games, and you've really got to do so comfortably. Um, from there, can you steal one at home against Rutgers? Can you go to Northwestern's temporary stadium and win one on the lake? Minnesota, maybe. There just aren't that many games you look at as these games that if Purdue is what the prognosticators think they are, the last place team in the league, a 3.5 win total team, there aren't that many spots that you look at Purdue as like a live underdog.
Mhm.
You're looking at 14, at 21 point spreads most weeks. I think what success looks like is a couple pieces here. Is Purdue competitive? As I said, 6 of Purdue's losses were by 35 or more points last year. It's just getting dog walked. Purdue can't do that again this year. Are you more competitive? Instead of losing 66-7, can you lose to Notre Dame 38-21? Instead of losing, I don't even remember. I think Ohio State was 38-0 last year. Can you make that 35-17? I don't know. I'm just spitballing here, but trying to be a little bit more competitive in these games goes a long way. And I think when you look at a rebuild here, what do some of these young pieces look like, especially at quarterback? If Ryan Brown looks like a guy, boy, that really helps because you don't have to worry about quarterback. Or
Mhm.
if Malachi Singleton does, or whoever it may be, if you feel like you have a guy at quarterback or you have some really good young players that break through and you're able to keep them, that really changes your outlook moving forward. So it's a long way of saying I don't know because how can you truly know with how new this roster is?
Mhm.
A lot of the peripherals, a lot of the indicators don't exactly scream smashing success. But, in Purdue history, you go back to 1997 when Joe Tiller took the job over after a miserable stretch, 13 straight years without a bowl game. And he takes Purdue to a bowl. I think they won 8 or 9 games that year. 2017, Jeff Brom walks in the door and they go 6-6, go to a bowl game and win it to go 7-6 after they won 9 games in the previous 4 years. So anything can happen. It's an uphill battle, especially with the schedule. But I think if Purdue looks fundamentally sound, if Purdue looks, I don't want to use the word competent because that's so damning, but
Mhm.
if Purdue looks comfortable out there, if Purdue looks like it's headed in the right direction, I think a lot of fans will consider that a successful season.
I think that's a fair outlook. I mean, listen, we had a blast in West Lafayette last year. I have a soft spot in my heart for Purdue. It was a fun stadium. It was a fun atmosphere. So, hoping for the best for the Boilers in 2025. I feel Jordan, like most of our traffic on this episode is going to come from you guys anyway. But for anyone who is not familiar with your work, just let our listeners know where they can find you guys and what you're working on here over the next couple weeks heading into fall camp and then the season.
Yeah, absolutely. Boilers and Beyond available anywhere you get your podcasts. We'll be talking about fall camp preview next week. Really looking forward to that, taking a deep dive at the roster and telling Purdue fans who these people are that are going to be wearing a Purdue helmet. Got an interview coming up with Brett Ciancia from Pick Six Previews as well. So looking forward to some of those as we get into the countdown to kickoff series here just 5.5 weeks away from teeing it up inside Ross-Ade Stadium.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We're so close. I'm really excited. We're almost into August. It's going to be a great season. Everyone, that was Jordan Jones from Boilers and Beyond stopping by today. Thank you, sir, once again for joining us. And everyone in the chat, thank you for stopping by as well. We will be back with you guys at 9 Eastern again, live on YouTube tomorrow night. Tomorrow we are talking the Washington Huskies with Roman Tomashaw from Locked On Huskies. Thank you, everyone, for stopping in. We will see you tomorrow night.